Pleistocene epoch, 20,000 years ago. It is the height of the final ice age, and colossal glaciers, some over a half-mile to 2.5 miles thick, have spent centuries advancing and retreating again and again across the globe's northern hemisphere. In what would one day be Scotland, the movement of these massive ice sheets would scour the earth, gouging deep valleys and basins through the rugged terrain. And as these walls of ice retreated one last final time, their meltwaters would fill those great valleys, forming numerous lakes, or lochs as they are known in the Gaelic language. In fact, they would form 31,000 lochs to be exact. But one in particular would gain worldwide attention. While it is not the largest nor the deepest loch in all of Scotland, it is still the most famous body of fresh water in the entire world. For within the cold, dark waters of Loch Ness is said to dwell a monster. History is rife with tales of the inexplicable and the unknown. Stories so bizarre, they send the fingers of doubt creeping into the recesses of our very minds. Join us as we investigate.
This week in Creepy History.
Hi, I'm Sam Squatch. Welcome to episode... Oh, damn, I f***ed up again. All right, try again.
And 3 and 2 and 1.
Hi, I'm Sam Squatch. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 11 of the Creepy Acres Podcast. This week in Creepy History, and with me, as always, of course, is the beautiful, the gorgeous, the stunning,
Wow.
the
Keep going.
effervescent...
Sam, are you just reading from a thesaurus?
What?
Sam.
No, I'm not reading from a thesaurus. God, I know words. Okay, is the aesthetically pleasing, beauteous, the asymmetrical. That seems weird.
Oh, okay.
Oh wait, that's something else. No, it's Laura Kram.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing, Laura?
Heyo.
Now, in case anyone's wondering, the reason why this might seem a little odd to you if you've been following along, and if you haven't been following along, shame on you. But the reason why this may seem a little weird is because we're Freaky Fridaying this shit right now. Mm-hmm. That's right. I'm in the driver's seat, and Laura is co-pilot for a very special reason on this episode, because it's my birthday episode.
Woohoo!
Okay, remember to add air horn sounds right here. One of those, like, yeah.
Hey. Happy
Yeah.
birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Cut me out, please.
Yeah, I'm not going to remember that. Anyway, so now what does this mean? This means that for this very special episode,
So special.
and not like a very special episode of a sitcom where like a normally funny show ends up talking about one of the characters got cancer. We're not doing that. It's not that kind of special episode.
What is it?
It's my birthday episode, and I booked the host, and I chose the topic. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, Sam, what did you choose for the topic? Probably Bigfoot, right? No, it wasn't Bigfoot. I'm not narcissistic.
You are.
No, not this time. No.
Not this time, though.
Right. This time I am just very, very confident. Okay. I'm in the driver's seat.
You're in the driver's seat.
I'm the one calling the shots. Now, I want you, Laura, to sit there and do what I normally do, which is sit there and look f***ing gorgeous.
I was going to say just fart and pick my nose.
Oh, look, I would ask you to do that, but I'm not certain you can do those two things at the same time, because apparently you got both your brain cells set to snark. All right.
I'm kidding. Keep going.
Okay, so. Are you done? So childish. Ugh. Anyway, so I got to pick the topic.
Yes, you did.
And I got to book the guest.
For once, you did some work.
Oh, ha, ha, ha. Look, I do work, okay? Look, that said, I gotta say, I'm really enjoying myself here in the driver's seat, okay? I'm having a good time.
Are you? Good.
The power's intoxicating.
I don't like being on this side.
Nobody cares. So, I want you to guess what you think today's topic is gonna be. I will give you a hint. It is a cryptid. That is what you get.
Is it walking pants?
Did you just call the Fresno Nightcrawlers walking pants? I mean, you're not wrong, but you're wrong. It's not.
Is it the lovable squonk?
Boy, you know, I didn't think about that. I do love this squonk. You know why? Because he's so sad. Or he or she. I'm not really sure what the hell it is. I'll be honest with you. I can't tell. It looks like a pile of beige laundry. And it makes me sad.
Is it the squonk? Is that what we're talking about? Did I get it right?
No, God, no. It's my birthday. I wouldn't talk about anything so goddamn depressing. No, absolutely not.
Is it something that flies?
It is not something that flies.
Is it something that swims?
It does swim. It does swim.
Is it some sort of lake monster?
You are technically correct. It is a lake monster.
So it's Nessie.
Oh, for God's sake. Laura, there are other lake monsters out there, all right, besides just Nessie, okay? There's Bessie, there's Altamahaha, there's Normie, Champ, Ogopogo, Igapogo, Manapogo, Morag, Peppy, Pressy, Smetty, Tahoe, Tessie, Wally, Whitey. I mean, that's just a couple. That's just off the top of my head, okay? So it's not just Nessie, all right?
I'm right.
Oh, for God's sake.
I'm right.
Yes, it's Nessie. God damn it.
Yes.
Yes, you're correct.
Suck it.
Calm down, Kram. God. Yes. Today we are talking about Nessie. I picked the topic, and I went with the classic, okay? And that is, I went for a cryptid that, as far as I know, actually predates the first sightings of Bigfoot and Sasquatch.
Yeah, it goes way back. Hundreds and hundreds of years.
Way back. And to tell us just how far back.
All right, let's turn it over to Nathaniel Leonard.
No. That's my line. That's me. Hey.
No.
Hey. Look.
I still want to say that one.
No. I'm the captain now. All right, let's turn over to Nathaniel Leonards.
Loch Ness, with a length of 36 kilometers, 22 miles, and a width of 1.5 kilometers, 1 mile. This vast body of fresh water is one of the largest lakes in not just Scotland, but the entire United Kingdom. Surpassed only by Ireland's Loch Earn and Loch Ness and Scotland's Loch Lomond. And while it does reach an impressive depth of 230 meters, 755 feet, it also fails to be the deepest, coming in second behind Loch Morar, which reaches an astonishing 310 meters, over 1,000 feet. In fact, Loch Morar is so deep that if one were to stack 3 statues of liberty atop one another at its deepest point, it still wouldn't break the surface. And yet, the depths of Loch Ness's waters are so vast that it never freezes, despite the fact it is located further north than Moscow or any portion of the contiguous United States. In fact, it is located even further north than some portions of Alaska. And even though these waters do not freeze, they are brutally cold. Even on the hottest days of summer, its waters remain frigid, sitting at a consistent 5 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So cold that hypothermia awaits many would attempt to swim its waters without the proper protection. So, is it any wonder that the people living here, near these cold, dark, and terrible waters, would believe that they were home to dangerous and malevolent creatures such as kelpies, or as it is sometimes known, the water horse. These legendary beasts have been part of Scottish and Irish folklore for centuries, and while they can appear in human form, these shape-shifting water spirits usually take the guise of a powerful horse. While in this form, they will wait near bodies of water, such as rivers, lakes, or lochs, appearing docile, even tame. But once an unsuspecting victim attempts to ride the creature, they will find themselves adhered to the hide of the beast. Then it will dive into the waters, drown its victim, and finally devour them. These fascinating and deadly creatures are as dangerous and unpredictable as the waters they have called home seemingly forever. In fact, it is likely that the legend of the Kelpie has been part of Scotland longer than the Scottish themselves, for the earliest known representation of this mysterious creature can be found on Pictish stone relics dating from the 6th to 9th centuries. These ancient people, the Picts, called the area now known as Scotland their home during the late Iron Age and early medieval periods, long before the existence of the Scottish people. And while the story of the Loch Ness Monster is often intertwined with the age-old tales of Kelpies, the modern era of what we now know as the Loch Ness Monster would begin less than 100 years ago. And it would begin not with a whimper, but with a bang, or more precisely, it would begin with a tremendous upheaval. April 14th, 1933. It is around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Mr. John McKay and his wife Aldie are driving down the recently constructed A82, the road that snakes along almost the entire northern shore of Loch Ness. About 5 miles north of Lewiston and Drumnadrochit, near the now long abandoned and nearly forgotten pier at the village of Abriachin, Aldie casually glances out over the calm waters of the loch when suddenly something thrusts up out of the depths of those cold, dark waters and changes her and her husband's lives forever. Aldie watches in wide-eyed wonder as a huge black mass breaks the surface of the loch, water rolling off of it. And then her wonder gives way to panic as it begins to roll and plunge, causing the waters about it to froth and boil. Meanwhile, John, Aldie's husband, was driving and completely unaware of the scene that was transpiring before his wife's bewildered eyes.
Stop the beast!
Startled at her sudden outburst, John hit the brakes and stopped the vehicle. The beast was colossal. Aldie would describe it, looking as if it had the body of a whale. Now, the waters about it were cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. Then, with a final plunge, it vanished, just as quickly as it had appeared. All it left behind was a ripple of waves on the surface. The McKays waited almost half an hour, but the creature never returned. The sighting would be reported 2 weeks later in the Inverness Courier, when Alex Campbell, the newspaper's Fort Augustus correspondent, would report the couple's encounter with an unknown creature in an article titled "Strange Spectacle on Loch Ness. What was it?" However, it would be a simple decision made by the Inverness Courier's editor, Dr. Evan Barron, that would catapult the creature to worldwide fame and make it a household name. were at his insistence due to its reported tremendous size. Campbell's article would refer to the McKay's unknown creature simply as monster. Because of this, despite the fact tales of mythical creatures living in the loch had existed for centuries, on May 2nd, 1933, the legend of the Loch Ness Monster would be born. Less than 100 years ago, or to put that into perspective, the legend of the Loch Ness Monster was born just 3 days after the birth of the red-headed stranger himself, country singer Willie Nelson. However, the story wasn't over yet. May 11th, 1933, just 9 days after the Inverness Courier article is published. It is between 5 and 6 p.m. as Alexander Shaw and his son, Alistair, stand in front of their home located in Whitefield, Scotland, where it stands 150 feet above Loch Ness, overlooking its dark, deep waters. As they stare out over that peaceful loch, its black, mirror-like surface suddenly erupts. At first, it simply looks like a wave that would be caused by a passing boat, and then it surfaces. About 300 yards from shore, a dark hump, 8 feet long and moving with haste across the loch. In its wake, it leaves a wash, like one that would be made by an outboard motor. In front of the hump, something seems to be undulating up and down, below the water but never quite breaking the surface. The two watched for nearly 10 minutes as it continued on its path toward Urquhart Bay on the opposite side. Just then, it began to rain, and the wind began to pick up, and any sign of the creature was obscured. When it finally did clear, the creature was gone. 2 weeks later, it would return. May 27th, 1933. Mrs. Nora Simpson would spot the loch's monster just 45 yards from shore, near Aldie. She would report seeing a black mass lying motionless on the surface of the water. It appeared as two humps, a small one in the front and a larger to the rear. Together, they measured roughly 30 feet in length. Soon, this mass would begin to move toward the center of the loch, a V-shaped wake trailing behind it. Once in the center, with a sudden splash, it dove below the surface. Ripples would be sent out across the loch that would break along its shore. Just like that, once again, the creature was gone, vanished without a trace, like the whisper of a ghost. However, according to some, the creature wasn't done yet. It would make another appearance that very same day, but this encounter would be like nothing that had come before. For Mrs. Eleanor Price Hughes would claim that the monster emerged not from the loch and its waters, but from a thicket along the northern shore of Loch Ness, near the village of Drumnadrochit. It would be her husband that would spot the monster as it heaved its great knobby dark gray body into those frigid waters. Before it extended a long undulating neck on which sat a small snake-like head. The man would also notice something else, something disturbing. There, dangling from the beast's mouth, locked in its jaws, he would claim, was a baby. Then the hideous apparition was gone, vanished back into the depths along with its grisly prize. since many details are missing from this encounter. It is often overlooked, ignored, or dismissed altogether as just a story and nothing more. But one man did not dismiss it. Dutch zoologist Dr. Anthony Cornelius Odmans, who served as the director of the Royal Zoological Gardens at The Hague, and who had made a career from researching and studying sea serpents. He would record and publish that tale. But by the time his article was released, it was already 1934. A full year later, and by then, it would be lost amongst a deluge of reports. And the sightings were just beginning, for soon it seemed as if every resident around or even near those great, dark, deep waters would bear witness to the beast. In fact, eventually even Alex Campbell, the Fort Augustus correspondent for the Inverness Courier, who originally reported on the McKay story, would even have a sighting of his own. So what are we to make of these tales? While Eleanor Price Hughes' story of a monstrous thing, lurching ashore to snatch a child and drag it into the depths to be devoured, may feel like pure sensationalism invented to sell newspapers, such tragedies like this do occur even today. In fact, in one calendar year, it is not unusual for crocodiles alone to claim 1,000 victims. However, some would claim that what the monster had locked in its jaws that day wasn't a baby at all, but was in fact a lamb. The bleats of that tiny animal being mistaken for the cries of a human child. Others would claim it was a baby seal, and while the idea of seals swimming through Loch Ness may seem far-fetched, local fishermen report sightings of seals visiting the loch nearly every 2 years. And while Eleanor Price Hughes' story may be thin on detail, it does solve one nagging problem, often cited by skeptics. They argue that while Loch Ness is home to various fish species, including salmon, trout, and eel, those dark peat-stained waters simply do not contain the numbers necessary to sustain a breeding population of large predators. But if that creature were capable of venturing onto land, and it was capable of hunting, then it would find endless wildlife and livestock in the rolling pasture lands that surrounded the loch. Or perhaps there is another way. While no proof has ever been found, rumors and legends have often claimed a vast system of caves and fissures exists beneath the loch, a network of tunnels reportedly connecting to other lochs as well as the ocean itself. If this were true, then perhaps the loch itself isn't a lair to one great beast, but merely a spawning ground. A safe and isolated nursery where its offspring could grow, hidden and undisturbed, before venturing out into the world. And perhaps it had done just that, undetected for eons, hidden from prying eyes. That is, until 1933. Prior to this, there had only ever been one road near Loch Ness, and that was General Wade's Military Road, or B852, originally constructed in 1715 AD and extending between Inverness and Fort Augustus. This roadway was built by the British government to speed up the movement of their troops into the Scottish Highlands to maintain control following the Jacobite Rebellion. This narrow road, despite its proximity to Loch Ness, offered very little in the way of glimpses at the actual waters themselves. Instead, one finds the view often blocked and obscured from curious eyes by trees and rolling hills. But these are all mere speculation, or in the end, that is all we are left with. Intangibles, whispers, ghosts, legends, and lore, and at its heart, a creature, adding new pages and new chapters each year to its ever-growing legend. Since the first modern sightings in 1933, Nessie has woven herself into the very fabric of not just Scotland, but the collective imaginations of the world. This elusive creature has sparked scientific inquiries, inspired countless tales, and fueled the dreams of adventure and wonder for children and adults alike. She is not just a cryptid. A Loch Ness monster symbolizes something so much more. She reminds us that even in this modern age, where many feel there is nothing left to be discovered, that some magic, some mystery still remains. There are still some secrets left to discover out there, waiting for the curious, just below the surface. I am Nathaniel Leonards. This has been Creepy Acres, this week in Creepy History. It has been an honor. Thank you, and goodbye.
Wow.
Oh my God. Wow. Wow.
That
Okay.
Nessie.
Yeah, I love, oh my God. You know, I love Nessie. I love Nessie. I'm usually very jealous of all the other cryptids and crap.
Yeah,
I am very jealous. I'm a very jealous Squatch.
you are. You're very jealous.
I'm a very jealous Squatch. But you know what? I respect and adore Nessie because she was there before I was.
Yes.
And, yes, long before there were stories of my kind, there were stories of Nessie, and I respect that. Not like those young upstarts like Chupacabra and Mothman.
Whoa.
Well, okay, look, I know you're not terribly impressed with this
How do you know that?
because you're not a believer like I am. Because you tell me all the time when we're off the air, you say, I don't believe in this garbage. And I'm like, how dare you? How dare you? And the reason you say you don't believe is because you have never experienced it, even though you talk to a Bigfoot every goddamn month on this podcast. And you're still like, yeah, but you're just one Bigfoot. Blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
So, from your perspective, which is garbage, by the way.
Yeah.
But from your perspective, I want to know, what do you think Nessie is? Do you think it is a ghost? Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Demon, ghost, something was summoned from the other side?
Oh, okay.
Do you think it is like a leftover, a remnant population of dinosaur, plesiosaurs? Huh?
Okay.
Or do you think it's some misidentified animal? Or do you think it's a hoax? So what do you think it is? Fire away. I want to hear.
I have always thought that it's a ghost of a plesiosaur.
Oh my God. That's not bad. I was not expecting that. I was expecting some smart ass answer.
Or surgeon.
I knew you couldn't take it serious for 1 second. You're nothing but jokes.
I'm trying to fill your spot here.
Oh,
No, for real, I really think it's a sturgeon. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to break everyone's hearts. It's a sturgeon.
I hope to God it's not a sturgeon because I borrowed that son of a bitch a ton of money.
Who?
Nessie.
How much?
It was a shocking amount, an embarrassing amount, but only because I got contacted through Facebook from Nessie.
Through Facebook?
Yeah, through Messenger.
You sent money through Facebook?
What? No, I'm not an idiot, Laura. Of course, I didn't send money through Facebook, okay?
No.
God. Mailed her a bunch of gift cards like she asked, okay? God.
Oh, Sam.
Look, she said she was stuck in India that she was on vacation. She had gone there. She got stuck there. She needed someone to send her a bunch of money because she had no way to get back. She had no access to her bank accounts. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course I'm going to do it. It's Nessie, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I was just shocked Nessie knew who I was. I'm like, absolutely.
Have you gotten that back?
No, that was several years ago.
Oh.
I have not seen a dime of it. But it's Nessie. She's good for it, right?
Sure.
I mean, I've never actually met Nessie. Yeah. And also since then, that Facebook account has vanished. But
it's fine. You'll get it back.
no, I'm not worried at all. But you know
Mm-hmm.
who is going to know? Who's going to be able to answer this for us? And it's our guest. It's our special guest today. That's right. I booked a guest.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
For once, you did the hard work.
I did, and it was exhausting. It took me almost 6 minutes to type out a message and send it off. He responded almost immediately.
Wow.
But that was 10 minutes that I was like doing shit. It was really cutting into my sitting around doing nothing time, you know?
So who's our guest?
Okay, well, our guest is a author, researcher,
Uh-huh. That could be anyone.
a poet.
A poet.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
A filmmaker and an activist.
Wow.
Possibly a wizard.
Oh, a wizard.
A real Renaissance man.
I am stumped.
It is the one and only
Uh-huh.
Jonathan Downs.
Oh, wow.
I got Jonathan Downs for us to talk to right now.
Amazing. Good job.
You ready to have your fucking mind blown?
Yes, absolutely.
Hell yeah, here we go.
Please blow it off.
Oh, here we go. Jesus Christ. What the fuck? Calm down. Anyway, with us here today to speak with us is the one and only, the legendary, Jonathan Downs. Sir, it's an absolute pleasure to speak to you today.
Well, Sam and Laura, it's great to be on your show. It's wonderful to be here.
Sir, could you take a moment to explain to people the breadth of your work? Because I don't know if people understand the amount that you have done for cryptozoology. I mean, beyond just film and publishing and research. Take a moment to introduce yourself, because this is amazing.
I'm the director of an organization called the Center for Fortean Zoology, which I started partly for a joke.
Nice.
And partly because I'd lost my job and I had to find something else to do because the only thing I was trained in I couldn't do anymore. And I was sitting with my first wife on the shores of Loch Ness.
Ooh.
And just looking out vaguely at the water. And I thought, there really ought to be an organization for people who are into this stuff. And my wife, God bless her, she said, well, why don't you start one? And I said, okay, I will. And that's really how it started. And when we started, it was me, my ex-wife, and a little bloke called Dave, who I haven't seen in years. And now I believe we're the biggest general cryptozoology and Fortean zoology organization in the English-speaking world. There's a bigger one in South America, and there's a bigger one in Japan. But in the English-speaking world, I think we're the biggest. And I started the group back in 1992, and I've been doing it ever since. So for over half my adult life, I've been a professional cryptozoologist.
Now, how did you get into this? Was it just sitting on Loch Ness?
No, it was because when I was a little boy, my family lived in Hong Kong, which was then a British colony. And every Thursday, my mother would go down. We lived on top of the mountain. My mother would go down into the town and she'd meet up with her friends and play. She'd play tennis and have coffee with her friends. And then she'd always go to the library and she'd bring back thrillers, spy thrillers usually for my father, picture books for my little brother, and animal books for me, because I was fascinated by animals from a very young age. And then one day she brought back a book called Myth or Monster, which was basically a children's version of excerpts from On the Track of Unknown Animals by Bernard Heuvelmans. And I fell in love. It was one of the great epiphanies of my life, because I discovered that there were people who believed that there were monsters in Loch Ness, and there were people who believed in Sasquatch and in the Yeti, and then sea serpents and mystery cats and all this stuff. It was one of the three great epiphanies in my life. The other two being when I heard Led Zeppelin for the first time.
Oh.
I discovered that boys were different from girls. And those three things are basically what I've done through my life.
You know what? Thank God for moms, because I will tell you, the amount of people we talk to that credit their mom as being the one who got them into this stuff is amazing, you know? And usually just, you know, encouraging to read and stuff like that. But thank God your mom got you animal books instead of books on collecting postage stamps. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Sam. I really, really appreciate your approval.
Yes. I also have to say, as a Bigfoot, I am always a fan of any man who is willing to wear his hair long and full and proud.
The secret is that I've got a very, very tender spot at the back of my neck, and I hate having my hair cut. And so all the way through my life, I haven't. Last time I had a haircut was 22 years ago when my mother died, because she always hated me having long hair. So I had short hair for her funeral, and I haven't cut it since.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, I get it, man. Look, I get it. The guy who runs this show, Shawn, he went, oh my God, was it 6 years? I think it was 6 years after his father passed away. He didn't cut his hair, you know, and he would tell everybody, because like that point at the end of his hair, like his dad was still alive, you know, and like there was something about giving that up. He just couldn't do it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what one does. We're those transatlantic soul brothers.
Now, that's what he said. That's what he said. Now, I think the reason he didn't cut his hair is because he's lazy and cheap. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You know what? I just want to let you know you're not alone. I get it. I totally get it. Okay, so now I got to ask. In those formative years when you were, you know, reading stuff, were there other books besides On the Trail of Unknown Animals? Which, by the way, if people haven't seen it, it is a tome. I mean, it is a big book. You could drop that in a pillowcase, beat someone to death with it. It is a mighty book. But were there other books that you were reading at that time that also inspired you?
I'll tell you what I have on my bookshelves, which I bet you we're jealous of. I've got a first edition of On the Track of Unknown Animals signed to my brother, to Jonathan, my brother in cryptozoology. Best wishes, Bernard.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I am jealous. Wow.
It's one of the two best things I've got. The other one is I wrote a book about the Beatles many, many years ago. And again, my first wife sent a copy to Yoko. And I've got a Christmas card on the wall signed to me, Happy Christmas, War is over, love, Yoko and Shawn.
Wow.
And that just blows my mind every time I look at it.
Oh my goodness.
So what other books turned me on at the time? I loved the animal collecting books of Gerald Durrell, and he was my first great hero. And I read every animal book. I read all his books and every animal book I could find when I was a kid. And then when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I discovered a book about mystery cats in Britain. And I didn't even know there'd been mystery cats in Britain. But this was a book called Cat Country by the late Mrs. Di Francis, who I knew quite well, in fact, by the end, but she died, I don't know, about 7-8 years ago. But that totally blew my mind, because I didn't realise that there were mystery animals in Britain, apart from the Loch Ness Monster. And the idea I then picked up with what Bernard Hoffman has said, that there are lost worlds everywhere, and that you can make discoveries and find new species pretty well everywhere you look, as long as you look hard enough. And so it's been my job, basically, for the last 32 years, to try and bring scientific rigour to the study of things that are fundamentally absurd. So it's to try and mix the study of, forgive my language, weird shit, but with scientific rigour, and trying to mix science and studying these things that really shouldn't exist.
So, Jonathan, you're sitting around the shores of Loch Ness. Did you happen to see anything while you were there?
Not a sausage, nothing at all. I was a bit more of an old hippie in those days. Remember, this was over 30 years ago, and I was sitting on the shores of Loch Ness smoking a suspiciously long cigarette and looking, wow, man, I'm in Loch Ness, man. This is far out. So, no, I didn't see anything at all.
And you've done tons of research. You've been there multiple times. What do you think the Loch Ness Monster really is?
The interesting thing about it is it isn't a prehistoric reptile. I'll give you 3 reasons. 1, because the prehistoric reptiles had to come up to breathe. They were air breathers. They didn't have gills. 2, they had to come out of the water to breed. And 3, the lake was frozen solid in the last ice age. So people who say it's a prehistoric monster that's existed there for tens of thousands of years, nonsense. It can't be. But the people do regularly, 4 or 5 times a year, see these things. And they're seen more and more now because you've got people like, there's a guy called Owen O'Fadigan living in Ireland who spends all his spare time sitting looking at the Loch Ness webcam, and he gets pictures from the webcam. Some of them are really good. Some of them are just weird looking blobs in the middle distance. But he has, I think it's 8 or 9 now, the pictures that he's found. So there is something there. But because in the summer, have you ever been to Loch Ness, either of you? I don't know if you have, Sam.
No, I'm not. I am not allowed to go over there anymore. There was some issues. There was some stuff. I also got caught with some suspicious long cigarettes in my luggage, and I was not allowed to go. But I've heard it's great. I heard it's wonderful.
Yeah, we've not been there.
Sam, you're a star. You're going to come onto my show, and I'm going to interview you soon because this is wonderful. During the tourist holiday season, which is any time from Easter to Halloween, there are cars parked in every lay-by along the road around the lake, looking with people with binoculars and telescopes and things, all looking for the monster. One time I was there, I carried out an experiment, and this wasn't even in high holiday season. This was just before Easter. And we counted, driving around the lake, we counted 430 some cars with people in. So each of them had, say, 2 people in. That's 800 people at any one time during the high time of the year looking out over the lake. And if they're air breathers, they would come up for air far more often than they do, and they'd be seen a lot more often than they do. There's also another important factor, that because the water quality in Loch Ness is pretty rubbish, there are not as many fish living in the lake as you would think. There's about 8 or 10, I believe, species of fish living there, but not in particularly big numbers. And if you had a viable population of something 20 foot long,
It's not enough food.
there's not enough biomass there. But what happens if you think of something that, 1, can't breathe air, so it has to breathe with gills, and 2, only is seen very rarely? And at the risk of quoting Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's going to be a bloody great big fish, and once or twice in every generation you get a giant fish. And the most obvious fish for it to be is an eel. Now, eels are very, very strange creatures, and the relationship between mankind and these eels is totally weird, because they've been of economic importance to people for thousands of years. Since the Stone Age, people have been catching eels. People have tried farming eels and never managed it, although they have found if they catch baby eels and put them into a pit of fresh water and mud, they will grow into huge eels. But do you know when it was? Considering, people have been eating eels for 5,000 to 10,000 years. Do you know when it was that they discovered where the European eel actually breeds and how?
No.
I'm going to guess it was last Tuesday, but I could be wrong.
1943.
Wait, 1943. So, like, they figured that out during World War II? I mean, I feel like there was other shit going on, you know?
Yeah, ridiculous. Now, this is the American eel. They only found out where the American Pacific eels actually breed about 6 years ago.
No.
Yeah,
No.
these are really common creatures. Everybody knows what they are, and we didn't know the most simple parts of their biology. The European eel breeds in the Sargasso Sea, which, and this always amuses me, is in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. It's got nothing to do with the Bermuda Triangle, but it does amuse it. In the middle of it, and the American eels on the American and the Asian eels on the Pacific coasts breed in the Marianas Trench near the Philippines. But what happens is eels come into fresh water as babies, and they stay in fresh water for however many years it takes with the amount of food they've got for them to reach sexual maturity. Then, when the biological imperative kicks in, they swim back down the rivers into the sea. And this is where it gets weird. They stop eating and they swim, living on stored fat, all the way down to the South Atlantic, where the Bermuda Triangle and Sargasso Sea is, where they mate, they spawn, and they die. And the eggs of the eels turn into a funny little leaf-shaped fish the size of my fingernail, which are called leptocephali because they're leaf-shaped and they've got a leaf-shaped head. And so these things slowly make their way up the Atlantic again until when they get into British coastal waters, they turn into tiny little eels called elvers. And they swim up the river again, the whole thing happens again. But what happens when eels are stuck somewhere where they can't get out and have to stay in fresh water? And what happens if for some reason an eel is sterile and doesn't have the biological imperative to swim back down into the sea? I think both of these hypotheses are true. And when an eel, for some reason, either doesn't get the biological imperative to leave fresh water or is stuck in fresh water permanently, it just gets bigger. I don't believe the stories of 30, 40, 50-foot eels in Loch Ness, but I don't know if you can see this, but do you see the scar on my finger there?
Oh, yeah.
When I was a naughty boy of about 11 or 12, my mate David, who lived next door, and I used to sneak out at night and go fishing. And one time we caught an eel that was about 8 inches long. It bit me so hard that that's the result. And I've still got the scar 54 years later because I'm 65 this year, and that happened when I was 11.
Oh, my God.
And so if you have an eel that can grow up to 8, 10, 12 feet, I don't want any bigger eel because that's a bloody terrifying monster. And that's what I think the lake monsters, which are reported not just in Loch Ness, they're reported in several Scottish lakes, a lot of Irish lakes, and across the Northern Hemisphere, all the way around the world. They're found in the northern part of the United States, they're found in Canada, they're found in Siberia, in northern Japan, they're found all around the Northern Hemisphere. And I think that they are either sterile or landlocked eels, which have grown absolutely magnificently large. So that in a nutshell, it was a bloody big nutshell. Sorry, I got carried away a bit.
No.
I find eels absolutely fascinating.
There's always been stories about Loch Ness Monster, how, people are driving around the loch and they see one cross the street and then go into the water. Do you think these are made up stories? Do you think people are actually seeing something and they're just not recognizing what this animal is?
People really, especially as we carry on in years, the world is getting more and more divorced from the reality of what the natural world is all about. And people see things and they don't identify them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Loch Ness in the middle of the summer, and they have heat hazes, which cause sort of mini mirages on the roads as you go along in the height of summer. You have them on Dartmoor as well. I'm sure you've seen heat hazes.
Oh yeah.
What I believe the most famous land sighting of the Loch Ness Monster was the one with Mr. and Mrs. George Spicer. What I think they saw was a pair of roe deer, a roe back and a roe hind, showing what happens when a mummy roe deer and a daddy roe deer love each other very much and cross the road in a heat haze. That's what I think it was.
Okay.
Okay, who had horny deer for the Loch Ness Monster speculation bingo? Anybody? I'll be honest with you. It's a pretty good explanation, you know.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. There are a lot of people who say, oh, bloody John Downes, all he does is he's got sensible answers for everything. He doesn't believe in monsters. Of course I believe in monsters, but I don't think it does the subject any favours whatsoever if you don't look at the sensible possibility before you go to the crazy one.
Mm-hmm.
So once we remove all of the monster sightings that are, you know, probably just misidentified stuff, the stuff we're left with, you know, all these, I mean, there's still a ton of these, you know, lake monsters. I'm sorry, loch monsters up there in Scotland. There's still a ton of them. So my question is, at that point, are we dealing with one creature that's traveling from lake to lake? Or are these all the same kind of creature trapped in all these different lakes?
I mean, people have said that there's lots of underground caverns in Loch Ness, and it's just one that's just going in and out. What do you think about those ideas?
I've never seen any documented proof of this. That's not to say they don't exist.
Okay.
And I know there are caves underneath there, but I've never seen any real proof that the caves could go long enough and get into the sea and things. I think it's highly unlikely, personally.
And you think like sonar pickups are just eels or maybe sturgeon?
Have you seen that footage that Katie Elizabeth got 2 years ago on Lake Champlain? The sonar footage.
Nope, but I am intrigued. Go on.
It's on my YouTube channel as well. I'm very fond of Katie. She's a very nice person. But her footage of something which could have been a very large eel, or it could have been something else, she then showed pictures of what the sonar footage from a shoulder fish and from a sturgeon or other a sturgeon and from a whale in a whale in the sea, and we showed what all these images looked like, and they look totally different from the one that So I still think giant eels are a likely possibility, because in New Zealand, for example, there's another species of eel which gets 12, 14 foot long. It's absolutely enormous. So there's no morphological reason why eels can't get that big.
And there is enough food for there to be a giant eel.
Well, yeah, because you're only going to have one or two of them there at any one time. There isn't enough food source for a whole breeding population of, I think, from memory, the smallest number of animals you can have to have a verifiable breeding population, I think, is 23. Don't ask me why, I've got no idea. But there is certainly not enough food there to support a population, a viable breeding population of these things. But if they are something which is only there some of the time, and some of the time there aren't any giant eels there at all because they've died and the next generation of them haven't come back, to me that makes a lot more sense than, it certainly makes more sense than most of the nonsense that people spout about it being a I even heard that once it was a mini submarine back engineered from technology from the Roswell crash. I mean, when you hear that sort of nonsense.
Or a ghost of a plesiosaur.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. But no, I don't believe in that.
Okay, well then I'm going to scratch that off my list of phobias then. Ghost of a plesiosaur, because I'll tell you, that was way up there, right up there next to spiders.
Well, Sam, if I ever see a ghost of any dinosaur, and of course a plesiosaur wasn't a dinosaur, but if I see any ghost of any prehistoric marine reptile, I'll tell you so you can start getting your amulet collection out again so you won't have to be scared of them.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. I will say my amulet collection, not probably what it should be, you know. Now, I just got to take a second here and say, I know that Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, gets all the attention, okay? Gets all the attention. But there are numerous lake monsters, or I'm sorry, loch monsters, all across Scotland and Britain and whatnot. So do you feel like there are any others that probably don't get the same amount of attention as Nessie, but probably should?
The big one, which I think is the most likely, is a place called Loch Ness. And that's been studied. There's been stories of lake monsters there for decades, at least a century. But there are two different types of monsters that are seen there. One is something that looks like a giant eel, and the other is something which has been seen on land or in shallow water and looks very bulky. Now, until very recently, although we've always known that walruses will come into British waters, until very recently it was thought it only ever happened 4 or 5 times a century. But there has been 4 walruses in British waters in the last 2.5 years. And my mate Richard Freeman, you've got to have Richard on your show because he's great fun. And I've known him and worked with him for about 30 years. And he came up with the idea that when these big bulky things are seen in the shallow water next to the stream, the tiny river which connects Loch Ness with the sea, that is a bloody good monster because nobody would be expecting to see a walrus there. And if you think that walruses dive because they eat clams and other bivalve shellfish, if you think that they dive to the bottom of the lake and then come up covered in seaweed, that's one hell of a monster.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I don't think people understand just how big
Those are
a
huge.
walrus gets.
Yeah.
Like they just think like, oh, it's a little bigger than a seal. They're monstrously huge.
They're like your size, Sam.
I feel like you're trying to fat shame me, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. They're like the size of a car. They are quite large.
Yeah, wonderful creatures. I'm so excited that it looks like within the next 20 years, there will probably be breeding walruses in British waters. I think that's the one good thing about climate change, because I want to see British walruses.
Well, like they always say, if life hands you a bag of lemons, I guess make walrus lemonade. I'm just spitballing here. I got nothing. So, Mr. Downs, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the Loch Ness Monster, or just sea monsters in general?
In the north of England, there's a town called Blackpool. It's a holiday resort, and if anybody from Lancashire is listening, please forgive me for what I'm about to say next. It's a cheap and nasty holiday resort. I hate the place. But I was there 15 years ago, something like that, and I went to the aquarium there, and there is right up at the top of the Blackpool Tower, there's an aquarium. And according to the British Anglers Association, eels in British waters never get more than about 4 foot in length. In the Blackpool Tower Aquarium, they've got a bloody very big tank that's got 2 eels in there, which are about 5 foot in length, which are far bigger than they're supposed to be. And I went and spoke to he wasn't the curator, he was the bloke who worked there. He said he'd been working there 30 years, and the eels were there when he was first there, and they were the same size as they are now. And as I said earlier, if an eel is prevented from going into fresh water, it will just carry on eating what it's given and get bigger. And what better way to prevent an eel going into fresh water than put it in a bloody great glass tank at the top of a not very good replica of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, so it can't get out at all. And these eels we know were adult 30 years ago and have been fed nicely ever since. They just get bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, Bernard Hoffman said there were lost worlds everywhere, but I bet he never thought there'd be a lost world at the top of the Blackpool Tower Aquarium.
What is the lifespan of eels?
Nobody knows. I don't.
Okay.
I don't know. I've got absolutely no idea. I would suggest that once they get big enough, as long as they don't get a disease, and the one that seems to kill them most is a white skin fungus, like you have in tropical fish. You have to treat. It's called white spot in fish. I think once they get bigger and bigger, they're probably pretty well indestructible.
Okay.
So do you think so basically they kind of work like goldfish? Like the bigger the bowl, the bigger they get. And they'll just keep getting bigger. Oh my God. That's upsetting.
Well, the problem is with goldfish is they will get bigger depending on the size of the enclosure they're in. And there was some pictures last year in the British tabloid newspapers. There was a lake somewhere just outside London, and they were catching. People had dumped goldfish in there years ago, and they were catching goldfish that were 2-3 feet long, absolutely enormous creatures. But the trouble is with goldfish, they have been very seriously inbred to be able to get the fancy shapes and sizes and colours. And so an animal that is inbred is more likely to be susceptible to diseases than an animal which isn't, like eels. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with these giant eels except for the fact either they're sterile or they can't get to the sea. So I wouldn't be surprised if they stay clear of diseases, as the only real predator an eel would have at that size is man. I think they could probably live for a ridiculous length of time. But if anybody's watching this who actually knows about longevity in eels, please let me know. I'd be really, really interested to find out.
Yeah.
It's the mystery that'll just keep going on. I like that.
Well, you should know about that, Mr. Sasquatch.
You know, life's a beautiful mystery, and so am I. So it works out.
Well, I'm enjoying myself so much. I want to come back again. I'm enjoying this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, you are welcome here anytime. Absolutely.
Thanks, Sam. Maybe we ought to go down the pub one day.
Oh.
Oh, all right. Yeah, now you're talking.
So, next question, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, sir. So, okay. So when it comes to Nessie, you're saying there's nothing paranormal, there's nothing supernatural here. But what about the other cryptids? Because the UK is full of stories, and some of them are pretty out there.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Black Shuck?
Be sure to check out Season 1, Episode 3 of the Creepy Acres podcast. This week in Creepy History, the Black Shuck, Hell's Hound, with special guest Andy McGrath.
What do you think about that story?
Now, the interesting thing about that is I do know a couple of people who've seen Black Shuck. But the interesting is, especially where I live in the West Country, a lot of the places where you used to have stories of Black Shuck, you now have the stories of the Black Big Cat. And for example, in the 1920s, there was a woman called Barbara Carbonell who studied the black dog legends on the road between Exeter in South Devon and Barnstaple in North Devon, and particularly when it went through a little village called Copplestone. And there were dozens of black dog stories along that road. And now, as far as I'm aware, no one's seen a black dog along that road for decades. But people do see the black cat. And it makes me wonder, there's two obvious questions from this. One is that they've always been seeing a black cat and didn't realize it and interpreted it as a dog. Or two, that there is something, and I hate, by the way, I hate the words paranormal and supernatural, because these things are perfectly normal and perfectly natural. They're just defined by laws of science we don't understand yet. And I truly think that there is a great possibility that the animals, the things that people are seeing, they're just interpreting them in a completely different way. Because back in the days before television and mass media, people knew what dogs were. Nobody had ever considered that there could be big cats in Britain. But now, if you look at the way the media treats big cats, in England anyway, there are television adverts featuring pumas, lynx, jaguars. They've got Jaguar car, lynx, antiperspirant, puma running shoes. There are all these things. And they've become part of our shared cultural experience. And I think that whatever people are seeing, whether they are flesh and blood animals or something more esoteric, they're just interpreting them in different ways. What do you think about that, Sam? Because you've been interpreted in all sorts of ways, haven't you?
Oh my God. You have no idea. You have no idea. I mean, look, if I had a dime for every time they want to put me in a lineup, it's ridiculous. But I will tell you this. It makes what you're saying makes a lot of sense because, you know, if I was living in an area where there were no big black cats, like I had never seen, like I never considered like a mountain lion or something like that, or like a panther or whatever. Because if you are looking at a cat that is the size of a big dog, I mean, I could totally see. There may be a moment in my head where it's like, that looked like a cat. It can't be a cat. It's too big. It must be a dog.
I do know quite a few people that I've known 4, I think, 2 of whom are dead, who had seen black dogs around here. I know the black cats exist. I've seen one and I've seen a puma. I know lots of people who've seen the cats. But the best story is from the father of my family doctor when I was a little boy, who used to live in the next big village along, a place called Bradworthy. And he had a big house just outside the village, and his father had been the local doctor before him, and his son was the local doctor after him. He only retired a few years ago. But the old man, who I met 2 or 3 times, he died when I was a boy, he told the stories of how when he'd been walking his dog along the little country lanes, he heard a big pack of dogs. He didn't see them, but he heard what the Devonshire people call the devil's hunting pack. He heard them running past him, and as he went into his house, the noise of this pack of hounds came in through his back door with him and run upstairs. That's a really far out story, and I believe him absolutely, because his son told me the story years later, and everybody just accepted it. It was something that happened around here. They were either called the Devil's Hunting Pack or they were called heath hounds, because they'd always be seen or heard out on the heath, which in Devonshire dialect is yes. So it's yes hounds.
So just to clarify, so what you're saying is he heard them, he was outside.
Yeah.
He didn't see them. The sound followed him into the house and up the stairs.
Yeah.
That is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. That is really scary stuff. Oh my God.
Well, The part of the country I live is a very old part of the country, and my house here, it was built in 1800. In fact, worse than that, there were two cottages which burnt down in 1800, and then they were rebuilt as one, and this is the one. But this house is full of ghosts. The village pub's got ghosts. There are ghosts everywhere. And I remember when I first met my second wife, who died a few years ago, her daughter, who was 16, my stepdaughter, said, "Oh, it's not fair. Why can't we have ghosts?" I said, "Because you live in a house that was a field 5 years ago. It's brand new. It doesn't have any history. Where I live, the street, the little alley that I live in, it's called Back Street because it was the back boundary of the lands belonging to the manor house.
Oh, wow.
And it's the oldest part of the village because 1,500 years ago, when the village was started, the builders built mud huts along here, along this street, to live in while they were building the church and the manor house and the pub and everything else. So this is the oldest part of the village. And there have been people here 1,500 years.
Oh.
And although they didn't live in the same house where I live now, they lived on the same ground as I do now. And whatever ghosts are, and I think the jury's still out whether they are the spirits of the dead or whether they are standalone entities or whether Lethbridge's stone tape theory is real. But there can be no doubt that ghosts exist. What they are, God knows. But my house is full of ghosts, which is why I'm not surprised that the doctor, who lived in an older house than me, had phantom black dogs chasing him up the stairs.
Now, Mr. Downs, there is one more topic we got to talk about. There is no way of actually having you on our show and not bring up this topic. Now, some people may already know what it is, okay? But for those who don't, in 1997, you published a book, all right, that pretty much took this cryptid, this creature, that I feel like was pretty much languishing in sort of obscurity, and elevated it to a completely new level. That where it now entered the sort of pantheon of more classic cryptids. Now, it has not reached the heights of, say, a Yeti or a Loch Ness Monster. However, it is growing in popularity and in awareness. And that creature is, Laura, take it away.
The Owl Man.
That's right, the Owl Man of Cornwall.
Can you tell us just like a brief description of what has happened?
It's a long story. I don't think it'll be very brief.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Take your time, man.
I can give you the real story as far as I know it, but to disappoint you right at the beginning, I've only got the vaguest idea what it could be. And this is something which is not going to be completely solved using zoological terms of reference. This is something which really goes into X-Files territory. God, that dates me, doesn't it? Back in 1976, it was a very weird summer. It was the hottest summer on record in Britain until the last couple. And it was a very weird summer, particularly in southern Cornwall. And on Good Friday, a family had come down on holiday from the north of England, and their family were called the Mellings, which is an old English word meaning people who gathered honey. And the Melling family came down on holiday from the north of England, and they went to a little village called Mornan Smith. And for some reason, they followed the signposts outside the village to where the church is. And the church is actually quite a long way from the village. It's quite isolated. And they parked up in the village car park, in the church car park, and their two little girls went out to play in the wood while Mum and Dad got the picnic lunch ready. Suddenly there were screams, and the two little girls came screaming, running out of the woods, saying that they had seen a nasty feathered bird man flying above the church tower. Now, you've got to forgive me, even though I wrote the book, I wrote it 30 years ago, and my memory, I really am getting to be a silly old man, and my memory is terrible. I can't remember whether this was on that afternoon or the next day, but they, trying to calm the two little girls down, Mr. and Mrs. Melling took them to a steam fair just outside the town of Falmouth, where they had all sorts of old-fashioned steam engines and steam traction engines having races and pulling competitions and things, and all sorts of other sort of circusy sideshows. And there was a man called Tony Shields and his family, who had a family theatre company, and Tony Shields was also both a stage conjurer and also, it turned out over the years, he was actually a real wizard.
Oh.
And I've known Tony Shields since 1994, when I got divorced from my first wife. Tony Shields was like a surrogate father to me. I love that man very, very much. I haven't heard from him for years. You can never track him down. He just phones once in a while. But as he's now well into his 80s, I think he might have gone off the great monster hunting ground in the sky. But I do love that man very much indeed. He was pointed out to the Mellings because Mr. Melling had told somebody, he was talking to somebody, that what the little girls had seen. And he was pointed out as the man who knew everything about all the weird stuff that happened around Cornwall. He's also half Irish, so when he talks like this. And he's a lovely man. But when Mr. Melling came up to him and accused him of having set up some sort of a magic trick to scare his daughters, he said, well, if I was as good a magician to make a trick like that with a feathered bird man over the church tower, I'd be a better magician than I am now, and I wouldn't be in this steam fair. And he got the little girls to draw pictures of what they'd seen. Now, his daughters were also there, and some people believe that his daughters actually drew the pictures instead. There are 3 or 4 different versions of the pictures, and so I think it's quite likely that there was an original set, but they've been copied several times when he sent them off to the newspaper and to 14 Times and me and all sorts of other things. So you'll see in the book there's various versions of that picture. And by the way, if you want to, as cutaways, use any of the images in the book, you're welcome.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Yeah, we certainly will.
The Melling family were so scared by all this, they drove straight back up to the north of England and were never heard from again. I have spent many years contacting everybody within 100 miles of Manchester who has the surname Melling, and I've never found them. However, later on in the year, other witnesses, and they're nearly always young girls. And the one time a man saw it, he was young and 13 or 14 and was there with his 13-year-old girlfriend. So it is all of the sightings have been linked with pubescent girls or mentally ill and disturbed women.
Wow.
Which I think is quite important because, as I'm sure you know, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that poltergeists are always connected with disturbed women or girls going through puberty.
Mm-hmm.
Every poltergeist I've dealt with has been similar to that. And I believe that somehow the Owl Man is a 4 to 5 foot high winged humanoid, which is a sort of 3-dimensional poltergeist.
Oh my God, I love this. I love this. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. You broke my heart a little bit with saying that Nessie was just giant eels. But But you're winning me back, Jonathan. You're winning me back.
That's the best I can get to you as an explanation for what it is. But the more you look into the story of the Owlman, the more you find out there are so many owl stories and owl references based around the area, particularly of Morn Smith. I'll just give you two, for example. In the Phoenician times, round about the time of the birth of Christ, tin traders from what's now Syria and Lebanon, the Phoenician people used to sail all the way across the Mediterranean, all the way across the Bay of Biscay and up to British waters to trade tin with the inhabitants of South Cornwall. Some people believe that Joseph of Arimathea, who in the Bible was the man, probably a relative of Jesus, who gave his already pre-purchased tomb to the disciples for Jesus to be laid in after the crucifixion. It's widely believed that he was a Phoenician tin trader, which is why he had so much money. And it's even been suggested that Christ himself came to Cornwall and to northern Somerset with his uncle, Joseph of Arimathea, just going along for the ride, basically. And so Christ actually did come to British waters. I think personally, although I would love to believe it, I think it's probably quite unlikely, and it's probably too much of a coincidence. But it's a wonderful story. But the tin traders did come up. They sailed southern Cornwall, and then they'd sail up the Helford River, and they used to buy roughly smelted tin from the local inhabitants. The Phoenicians worshipped a god called Baal, and Baal was personified as a giant owl. And the Phoenicians did human sacrifices, mostly of children, to a giant owl. And the fact that a giant owl was seen in a place where I have no reason to suppose that the Phoenicians actually sacrificed children, but people don't change their religions. If somebody has gone from the Eastern Mediterranean all the way up to southern Cornwall and had a successful and safe journey, it's quite possible, I would have thought, that they would have sacrificed an offering to this god for giving them a safe journey, and we know what the offerings were likely to be. Now, fast forward now until nearly 100 years ago. In 1936, there was a surrealist painter called Max Ernst. And Max Ernst was living with, now again, I can't remember if he was married to Leonora Carrington or whether they were just living together. I can't remember. But Leonora Carrington was also a surrealist painter who lived in Mexico until she died at the age of 90-something, a few years, about 10 years ago. But in the 1930s, playing around with surrealist art and ritual magic, Leonora Carrington, Max Ernst, and the man who lived in the local manor house called Beakus Penrose did all sorts of weird theatrical magical rituals dressed as weird birds. And if anybody wants to look up the drawings and the engravings by Max Ernst, look at a book that he wrote called Un Semaine de Bonté, which is full of pictures of a character he called Lop Lop, who was a giant bird-headed man. And this is where it gets really weird. Guess what year Max Ernst died?
This is where it gets weird.
1976.
Yep, right on, baby. You win the prize for having read my book. And I'm sure you read it too, Sam. You just wanted to give the dear ladies a chance to take center stage.
She just read it to me. It's fine. I cannot read. but she filled in. She showed it to me. I saw the pictures. She read it to me. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. The idea that the guy who'd been doing invocations to raise half man, half birds in the 1930s would 40 years later die at the same time as people started seeing them does seem to me to be a little bit too much of a coincidence. And as my old friend Doc Shields used to say, there's no such bloody thing as a coincidence, boy. Except he didn't say bloody, but I think this is probably a family show, so I do my best not to swear.
Oh, no worries here, man. You can swear all you want. We clearly say right up front, cryptic comedy not for kids.
Okay, he used to say, listen to me, you stupid fucking English bollocks. There's no such fucking thing as a coincidence, you fucking idiot. That's what he was.
Historically accurate. I like it. Thank you.
So, does that answer your question about the owl man? It's been seen on and off ever since. I have met 2 or 3 eyewitnesses. I've interviewed another one, including one of the original 1976 witnesses. And I tell you what, I haven't got kids, but I do have a granddaughter. My 2 stepdaughters are grown up, but when Olivia said she was going to have a baby, I said, well, look, I don't mind being your stepfather because your father's still alive, but I'm buggered if I'm going to be a step-grandfather. I'm granddad, child. And I wouldn't let my little girl play out in the woods by morning old church. Although I'd be very tempted to try and experiment and see what happens.
Right.
I love her far too much and I wouldn't do it. Anyway, Olivia would probably beat me up and she's scary.
Well, there's got to be an orphanage somewhere, right? I mean, look, those kids, they need homes, and those homes come with a job, and that job is bait.
Now that sounds like I like your way of thinking, Samuel.
They're just sitting there useless in an orphanage. Take them, put them to work.
I love this. I'm really enjoying myself.
They used to put them in coal mines. This is nothing compared to that. I mean, it's fine.
It's a church. Come on.
Yeah, it's a church.
They used to put them up chimneys, to sweep chimneys.
Yeah. I mean, this is just an owl man. Nothing's probably going to happen. Maybe.
One would like to think not, but one never knows. And my stepdaughter would kill me, and I don't think they're going to let me go anywhere near an orphanage and say, come on, borrow half a dozen of your finest children, please, orphanage manager, because I want to try doing scientific experiments on them. That's the sort of thing which gets me into the Sunday newspapers.
That's true.
Yeah.
That
Dave
is
has
true.
a restraining order.
Yeah, I have several.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't come within certain amount of feet within schools.
No, not a one.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
So, John, what is the biggest known owl that's even in the area?
Oh, the biggest. Now, this again is quite an interesting story. The European eagle owl, which is about 2.5 to 3 foot tall, a big one, they used to be found in Britain in the Ice Age, but they're extinct in Britain. They're still found all across Northern Europe. They're not as big as your great grey owl, but they're approaching that size. And the interesting thing is that they're widely kept as pets. They're bloody awful pets because you can't tame them and all they do is bite. One of my nephews has got a pair of them. And I keep on telling him, well, just let the bloody things go. It won't matter, but it's illegal. He's already got his owls registered with the authorities. But once upon a time they were found here, are the one, and they're seen quite regularly across parts of England. Are they the descendants of ones that were pets that have either escaped or been let go because they've bitten their owners too many times? Or are they ones which have expanded their range? The nearest place they found Norway, and Norway across the North Sea to eastern England isn't that far, not for a bird with that sort of wingspan. And so at least 2 birds that have been found in Britain have turned out to be genuine vagrants from Scandinavia. But there are so many of them seen now, we don't know if they are all or most of them are escapees, or most of them are genuine vagrants. And to be quite honest, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it really matters. There is a school of thought that the people who saw the owl man in Cornwall had actually seen a eagle owl. But one of the people who I have interviewed and who saw the owl man says that it certainly wasn't, because he was and is a keen bird watcher, and he knew perfectly well what an eagle owl looks like, and this thing wasn't. For one thing, it didn't have a beak. It just had a sort of crescent-shaped hole where its mouth was. And he said there was no way it was an owl. And also, there are eagle owls reported in all sorts of parts of the country, but I've never found one reported from southern Cornwall, so I think it's highly unlikely. See, I told you it couldn't be. It wasn't a short story. It's a long and complicated one.
So is there sort of any connection to stories like this of the owl man to other stories like the bat beast of Kent, or like here in America we have like Mothman? Because a lot of these creatures, they are reported to not have heads. But if you have an owl and its head is tucked down, it may not look like it has a head. So I'm wondering if there's maybe a connection between these things.
I think the biggest connection, and again, everybody's going to start, because a lot of people claim that Doc Shields had faked the whole thing. I don't think he did, but he admitted to me that he had read John Keel's Mothman prophecy and was very tempted to do some sort of a hoax around it. And as Doc Shields was, and may still be, a very, very, very powerful magician, if you believe in such things, or even if you don't, I think he might have done some sort of, a bit like Max Ernst 40 years before, some mixture between a surrealist prank and a piece of invocatory magic to make the thing happen, and was disappointed when it didn't happen, and then more surprised than anybody else when it did start to happen.
Well, I mean, I can imagine. My God.
I've just seen, looking at me in the mirror, I look like a cross between Doc Shields and Charlie Manson these days, which is not a very good mix.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a fine mix. You look very wizardly. You look very wizardly.
It'll make my chance of going to the orphanage to get those children even less likely.
This is true. This is true. But you look very wizardly, you know.
Yes.
Hang on a second, Sammy. If you want me to look like a wizard or an alchemist, here is my alchemist hat.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, you nailed it.
Have there been any recent sightings of the Owlman or any flying humanoid in that area?
The most recent Owlman sightings I know, there's been within the last 10 years.
Okay.
It was in the newspaper, so it was in the Falmouth newspaper, so that was about 8 years ago.
Oh my God. So he's potentially still out there right now. Right now. Oh, I gotta say, you know what? This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for speaking to us. This has been a lot of fun, man.
And we do it again sometime. I've really enjoyed myself.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. You are welcome here anytime. This has been a lot of fun. And you know what? And thank you for not just for all your research stuff, but your publishing company, which has given me some of my favorite books.
Mm-hmm.
Would you two like to be on my show at some point?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If we can get the bloody Zoom to work properly.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed it mightily, and I look forward to doing this again.
And Jonathan, where can people find you if they want to read up on your books?
Okay, if you go to www. I know that your viewers are American, so I'm going to speak in American, not in the King's English. www.cfz.org.uk. Or if you happen to speak the King's English, cfz.org.uk. You can contact me through there. It's the CFZ website. You can contact me through there. You can buy our books through there. And as long as I've remembered to update it, you can see our web TV show, which you can also find on YouTube at CFZ TV or CFZ on the Track or something. You'll be able to find it.
thank you so much for taking the time to hang with us today.
I've had a lovely time and I want to do it again.
Oh, absolutely. You are welcome back here anytime.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh my God. I love that guy.
I love him.
Right? Right?
He is magical.
He is magical.
Thank you for getting him on the show tonight, Sam. I'm impressed.
Thank you. I'm going to be honest with you right now. He reminds me of like either a character that J.R. Tolkien would have put in one of his books, like, you know, one of the Lord of the Rings books, like probably more The Hobbit, because there's just sort of a lightness to him that I like.
Yes.
Or he's like one of the professors at Hogwarts who we just never got to see. They were like off screen somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I love it. The guy's magical. I love this guy. I kind of wish he would adopt me.
Me too. And take you far away.
Oh, ha ha ha. Look, I'm trying to be serious here, okay? I'm just saying, I'd like this guy to put me on his shoulder and take me on adventures.
Oh, that'd be a cute show.
It would be. Oh my God. I would watch the shit out of that.
Make it happen. Go to England.
Oh my God, I could. Move to England, be a house squatch? Yeah. Like a manservant? Yeah. I could be like Higgins on Magnum PI, you know? I could be like the Mr. Carson to his Downton Abbey, or like the Alfred Pennyworth to his Batman. Yeah. Probably end up more like Dobby the house elf, though.
Yes.
Look, the point is, I just want to hang out with him forever.
Yes, absolutely.
So for now, what I'm gonna do.
Wait, Sam.
What?
You didn't tell me what you thought Nessie was.
Oh, what do I think Nessie is?
Sturgeon, eels, ghost of a plesiosaur.
It's very personal, but I'm gonna tell you right now.
Okay.
Well, first off, the Loch Ness monster isn't a monster.
Not a monster at all.
No. I believe Nessie's that little bit inside of each one of us that just wants to be seen and heard, but never possessed, never contained. It just wants to be free and loved, and most of all, marketable. Yeah. Because I'll tell you right now, you put the Loch Ness monster on anything, and that shit sells like hotcakes. Like hotcakes, Laura.
I know.
I got a whole kitchen full of Loch Ness ladles. Okay, I don't need more than one. I got like 9 of the sons of bitches. Okay.
I have a Nessie tea infuser.
Exactly. So you see what I'm saying? You put Nessie on anything. There's a Nessie behind you right now sitting on your couch. I can see it right now.
There is. It's a plushie from Lisa Russell at Cryptid Comforts. Go check her out.
That's right. And speaking of merch, you know who else has merch?
Is it us?
Yes, it is us. If you go over to tpublic.com right now and search Creepy Acres, you're going to find our store over there, right? And we're going to also put the link in the show notes. You can find t-shirts, stickers, magnets, tapestries. Tapestries, Laura. We have tapestries, okay? We've got wall art. We got onesies and a bunch of other stuff that I can't think of off the top of my head.
We are marketable, aren't we?
Damn right, but that's not all, Laura, because guess what? June is Pride Month, and we have exclusive designs in our store right now for those of you out there who love cryptids and celebrate Pride Month. The point is, we got merch.
Now, Sam, is there anything with my face on it?
What? In the merch?
Yeah.
No, God, no. Not a single thing.
It's all right.
Look, it's not because your face isn't marketable. It's because I couldn't stand the idea of what you would be like if suddenly that thing starts selling like crazy. The ego I would have to deal with on a daily basis of you just going off about, oh, how many did we sell today? How many did we sell today? Like, oh my God.
That's very true.
Yeah,
I
it's
get
very
it.
true.
I get it.
Yeah, look, because I'll be honest with you, I'm very hesitant about having your face put on things because honestly, I don't know how long the management's going to keep you around. Have you met them? Have you met them? They're assholes.
I have.
Then you know.
Yeah, I do.
Not great.
On that note.
All right.
All right, Sam, let's wrap this up. You can find us at creepyacres.com, and you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, also YouTube, and we're on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which is now called X, Threads, and we have merch at tpublic.com.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And as always, hey, keep it creepy.
Golly, I do look like a wizard, don't I?